In 1665, London did not merely fall ill, it began to rot alive. You could go to bed in perfect health, dreaming of the morrow, only to be jolted awake by a searing agony beneath your arm. Where there had been smooth skin but a day before, now throbbed a monstrous, livid black bubo, the devil's mark. For many, this dawn would be their last. Over 100,000 lives, a staggering quarter of London's soul, were swept from the face of the earth in a matter of mere months. While the wealthy fled in panic, for the rest, London became a gilded cage. The city gates were slammed shut. Those who failed to escape were bricked up inside their own homes, entombed alive with the decaying remains of their kin. The bubonic plague of 1665 arrived without herald or warning. This is the chronicle of how the world's greatest capital was transformed into a single vast plague pit in the middle of its own streets. Welcome to London, 1665. This darkness did not fall on the city in a single night. It seeped in slowly. To understand the cost of what was lost, we must go back a few months, to May 1665. We move to Padding Lane, a narrow, bustling street in the very heart of the city, where the air smelled not of lime and death, but of freshly baked bread, cinnamon, and rosemary. Here, in a small bakery, Thomas's daily life began. He was neither a hero of chronicles nor a noble lord. He was a man who simply loved his craft. Fear had no place in his thoughts, only calculations. He counted sacks of grain, orders for royal buns, and the days remaining until the wedding of his beloved daughter Elizabeth, unaware that in a week his home would become a tomb. London was the trading heart of the planet. Its greatness rested on a single port. Every day, hundreds of ships arrived, laden with spices, wine, and silk. But this wealth came at a terrible price. Over the past decades, the city's population had exploded, surpassing 500,000. People flocked here from everywhere in search of gold. London was overcrowded, entire families crammed into timber-framed houses looming over narrow alleys. It was the perfect ecosystem for disease. The city survived entirely on imports, and through the ports of Amsterdam, where the plague was already raging, an invisible killer arrived in London. Alongside bales of expensive cloth, death came ashore. The culprit was the bacterium Yersinia pestis. It was brought in the dark, damp holds of Dutch trading ships. It did not fly through the air. It was carried by black rats and fleas hiding in imported silk. The first deaths in the slums of St. Giles were ignored by the authorities, afraid to halt trade. But with the arrival of spring, the bacterium awakened. Fleas began jumping from rats onto craftsmen, such as our Thomas. When the plague reached the wealthy city, true panic erupted. King Charles II, along with his entire court, fled instantly to Oxford, leaving London to its fate. Behind him went all those who possessed horses, carriages, and enough gold to purchase a passage through the city gates. But for those without wealth, the craftsmen, shopkeepers, and the poor, the city became, in effect, a cage. The Lord Mayor enacted the harshest measure in the city's history: forced confinement. If even a single person in a household showed signs of illness, the entire household was sealed away for a full 40 days. The healthy, infants, and the elderly were locked together in the same space as those dying in agony. Armed guards were stationed outside every such house to ensure that no one could escape this living tomb. It was here that everything came to an end for Thomas. His daughter Elizabeth fell ill with a fever just a week before her wedding. The authorities acted without mercy. The doors of his house were nailed shut from the outside, depriving the family of even the slightest chance of escape. Red crosses were painted on the doors. As the authorities forbade daytime burials, carts slowly moved through the streets of nighttime London.
Bring out your dead!
Driven by hired men. Their faces were wrapped in cloth soaked in vinegar, for they believed the infection lingered in the air. Their cry, "Take out your dead," echoed beneath nailed-shut windows. Relatives, imprisoned for weeks in their own homes, carried the bodies of loved ones to the doorstep. There was no room for farewells, tears, or prayers. A body, wrapped only in an old sheet or coarse sackcloth, was simply thrown onto the pile of others. No coffin, no name, no cross. Traditional churchyard cemeteries filled to capacity within weeks. The ground rose several feet, as though trying to force the horror out. Outside the city walls, great pits began to be dug, enormous open mouths in the earth, 2 human lengths deep. Bodies were thrown in layer upon layer, like logs in a stack. Each layer was generously sprinkled with quicklime. As the white powder touched the corpses, it hissed and frothed, eating at the flesh and attempting to burn away the plague that lingered in the dead. Medicine in 1665 was not merely powerless, it was dangerous. Physicians held firmly to the theory of miasmas. They believed the plague to be a poisonous air, born of the planets or the rotting earth. This gave rise to the most grotesque figure of the era, the plague doctor. Clad in a heavy leather coat, waxed so that the poisoned air would not cling to his clothing, he wore a beaked mask stuffed with rosemary, camphor, and dried roses, intended to filter the scent of death. In his hands, he carried long wooden rods, using them to touch patients while keeping a distance, or to lift the clothing of the deceased, for he was terrified of direct contact. The treatments were often far more terrifying than the disease itself. The buboes, swollen plague sores, were drawn out using a concoction of molasses, oil, and even crushed dried frogs. When that failed, they were cauterized with red-hot iron or cut open while still alive, in the belief that the poison must be expelled from the body. Due to a shortage of physicians, the authorities hired so-called searchers, usually poor elderly women who had little to lose. Their task was to enter homes and examine the bodies, looking for the telltale blue or black spots, the marks of God. They were the ones to deliver the verdict, whether to seal the house forever or grant the family a chance at survival. To purify the air, massive bonfires were burned throughout the city day and night. People were forced to smoke tobacco, even children, believing it to be an antiseptic. But the true tragedy lay in a fatal mistake by the city authorities. Believing cats and dogs to be the main carriers of miasmas, they ordered their extermination. 40,000 dogs and over 200,000 cats were killed within weeks. With their bodies filling the ditches, the population of the real killers, rats, which no one could catch, exploded exponentially. Humanity had destroyed its last biological shield, opening the way to millions of fleas. The plague wiped out a quarter of the city. Yet those who survived suddenly became incredibly valuable. There were simply no hands left to work.
The harvest rotted in the fields. Wealthy lords begged the peasants for labour, offering unheard-of sums of money and freedom in return.
The chains of old subservience had broken. Death stripped the lords of their titles and handed economic power to those who wielded the plough. It was the beginning of the end of feudalism in England. So, what finally brought this bloody chronicle to an end? The answer lies in a single spark that ignited that fateful Sunday on the very same street where our story began. We now move to the event that leveled the old city to give the new one a chance to breathe. The Great Fire of 1666. Purification through purgatory. A fire starting in a bakery reduced London to ashes. It was a terrifying form of disinfection. The flames destroyed the nests of rats, bringing the plague to an end. The city was rebuilt in stone, safer and cleaner than before. We do not know exactly where Thomas was buried. Most likely, he lies in one of the plague pits beneath what are now modern underground stations. The wedding dress made for his daughter turned to ash in 1666, along with the hopes of thousands of other Londoners. And perhaps the greatest lesson of this tragedy is that we never know which day will be the last of our familiar world, but we must always remember how vital it is to cherish every ordinary day and the lessons of the past. It is a visual interpretation created with the help of AI. We have facts, diaries, and numbers, but no one alive today can truly know what that horror looked like, or what it felt like to stand inside your own home and see a red cross painted on your door.
If this story resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more journeys through time. Thank you for watching.